I'm Miss Ashley from Feeble Kids Art Academy, and welcome to another amazing class. For our project today, we're going to be creating some cards. And you'll have a choice of either drawing a squirrel or a boy or girl in your card. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is we're going to be taking out some watercolor paper or some heavy-duty paper that we can use watercolors on. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my paper is side to side, which is horizontal. And I'm going to just take some yellow orange and paint the top. Trying my best to spread that paint around so it's nice and even. And after I have my yellow orange, I'm going to take some yellow and add that yellow to my paper. And I'm just very gently going back and forth, making sure that that color is evenly spread around. If you want to bring that yellow a little bit closer to the top too, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure that color is spread on your paper. Now you can have your entire background yellow, or if you do want to add some grass, you can use yellow-green. So we're just creating this nice gradient for our background. And my colors are pretty light. I'm not going too dark on those watercolors. Now, if you need to pause the video for any reason, you can go ahead and do so. But I'm just making sure my color is spread around. So there are my colors. I'm just going to go back over, make sure I have enough yellow-orange so it's nice and even. Now you can leave it like this if you would like to, or you can add just a few of those details with a smaller brush. So for example, I'm going to add some leaves falling from the sky. I'm going to take my red-orange and I'm just going to add some dots here and there on my paper. And you can even draw a few leaves with that small brush. So it really looks like some leaves are falling. These steps are optional. You don't have to draw those leaves with your brush if you don't want to. But I'm just going to add a few dots here and there. They don't have to be precise and even. That way it looks like those leaves are falling from the sky. I'll add a little bit more around my picture. Now I'm not going to add any leaves to the grass because we might not even see our grass by the time we are done with our card. And I'll add a few here and there. Also, you can take your yellow-green or your green and add just a few grass lines here and there. I wouldn't add too many though, because you might not see it by the time you glue on your pieces to your card. I'm just going to add some here and there, just in case I do see any. All right, and when you are done with that, you're actually going to set aside your watercolor paper because it does need to dry. So I'm going to set aside my paper. I'm also going to clean my table because I don't want to get any watercolor on my colored paper. Then I can go ahead and wipe my hands as well and toss that aside. I'll just put that aside for now. And we're going to take out all sorts of different colored paper for our project. I'm first going to draw the squirrel, and then I'll draw the boy or the girl. That is up to you. Now for my first colored paper, I want to choose a color that's good for my squirrel. So I have this kind of orange brown color. And the first thing we need to do is fold our paper in half. Because we need to make sure that we have that fold, because that fold is going to go in the middle of our card. Now I would like for you to use a pencil, but I'll be using a Sharpie so you can see my lines. So after you have folded your piece of paper for your squirrel, you are first going to go in the middle of your paper, and you are going to draw a curve going down. Then you're going to go close to the top of your paper and draw a U curve up and curve down and back over, because that's going to be our squirrel's head. Then we need to draw those arms by going to the bottom of the paper. Draw two straight lines and make sure they're even on both sides. And draw those triangles for the fingers. And I'm adding 4. Then you're going to cut along those lines. So there's one shape. And I'm just cutting out that head, making sure that it was on the fold. So when you open it up, it'll look like this. And then we'll cut out that arm. Now if you need help from mom or dad, you can always go and ask them for this step. So then you should have 2 arms. So your squirrel is soon going to look like this, but we are going to do just a few more paper cutting, not only on new paper, but on the squirrel's face as well. Now we also need to make a tail for our squirrel. Now you don't have to use the same color if you don't want to, but I'm going to, and I have extra scraps of paper right here. Unfortunately, the paper that I cut out my squirrel on is just too small, because remember, I need to have that fold still in the middle. So luckily, this scrap of paper that I have, I'm just going to fold that in half. And making sure that the tail is going to be bigger than my squirrel a little bit, I am going to draw a curve going out and down. Now I may need to make some adjustments later on as I'm gluing, but we'll go ahead and cut out our squirrel's tail. And I'm making sure to cut along those lines. And I'll put that scrap aside. So there is my tail. Now, just real quickly, I am going to measure and just make sure that that tail is big enough. I may need to go back and just cut a few things, but overall, it's looking pretty good. All right, once that's done, we actually need to cut out the belly. Once again, you're gonna take a different colored piece of paper and you're gonna fold it in half. And making sure that the belly is smaller than the body of the squirrel, you are going to draw a curve going down. Now that curve might be a little bit too big, so we can always make those adjustments if we need to. I'm just cutting along that line. So I'm going to open it up, see how it looks, and that looks pretty good. I can't complain. All right, so I'm going to leave those aside, but there is still one last thing that we do need to do for our squirrel. And this can get a little bit tricky, so if you do need any help, you can always pause the video and have someone help you. What you're going to do is you are going to make sure that that head is folded in half. And you're going to go to the side where the fold is, and you're going to curve up and curve back down, because we're making that mouth for our squirrel. And then you're going to cut along those lines. Remember, make sure you're using pencil for those steps so you don't see those lines. So when you open it up, you have your squirrel's mouth. And there is our squirrel so far. Now, before we glue our squirrel on, let's go ahead and just decorate his face and his tail and just glue some of those pieces together. So for example, I can easily take my glue and glue that belly onto the body. So I'm just going to take my glue. You can also use double-sided tape. I may use that double-sided tape for the background, but you can use glue as well. And I'll glue it in place. If you need to use any extra glue on that, you can go ahead and do so. Now, make sure as you're pressing that paper to keep it glued together, don't pound your fist on the table. You can actually use the side of your hand, or you can just run your glue stick, closed of course, along that paper, just to make sure it really sticks. Also, we'll just turn that over real quickly, and I'm going to glue those arms. Now, I don't want to see those lines that I had created with Sharpie, so making sure that my Sharpie lines are facing me right now, I'm going to glue those arms in place. So that way, when I turn it over, it looks like this. Now, I'm not going to glue anything quite yet at this point, just because I want to make sure that that tail's not sticking out of the card and it's not too small or big. So for right now, let's just hang tight on gluing some more. Make sure that glue stick is closed. And you can go ahead and decorate that face. So I've got some markers here, and you can use whatever you want to decorate that face. Maybe you want to add some details. Right now I'm just going to get my brown marker and draw a nose. And also, I'm going to just add a little triangle to the ears. And I'm going to give him black eyes using my Sharpie. All right, I also want to just get a white colored pencil to fill in those highlights. But you can color your squirrel's face any way that you would like. Maybe you want to draw some different eyes. I'm just going to add some white there for that highlight. Now, before you start gluing anything else, it's very important that you make sure your squirrel is big enough for your card. So my card is still drying, but as I can see right here, my squirrel, that tail is pretty big. So I may need to just scoot it down just a little bit to make sure. Also though, you want to make sure that those folds we created earlier are matched up, because those folds are actually going to be going on the fold of the card. So this right here is about good for my squirrel, and I would put that head right there. But for now, we're not going to do any gluing except for the tail and the body. So make sure those folds are lined up. If you need to go back and fold them again just to make sure where they go, you can go ahead and do so. In fact, I'm going to do that just so you can see those folds together. And I am going to glue my tail in place. And making sure that it's nice and evenly lined up. You can fold. Make sure to always put that cap back on your glue. And you can use the side of your glue stick to press it down, or the side of your hand. Just make sure not to slam your hands on that table. And that way it should be stuck together. Now that head is going to go right here. However, this is where it can get a little bit tricky. You can either line up that head, excuse me, and fill in the mouth and glue that head later, or you can take some red paper, and it doesn't have to be a big piece. And you can glue it in place where that mouth is going to go. Just make sure you do fold, because again, our card needs to fold and that paper needs to be lined up in that fold. So that way, once I am done with my card, that mouth will show through. But you can always use marker to color in that area, or you don't have to if you don't want to. And I'm just going to glue that paper in place. Now that is all I am going to be doing right now for my squirrel. Right now I am going to be moving on to drawing either a boy or a girl. If you just want to stick with your squirrel, you can go ahead and fast forward through this video. But if you are wanting to draw a boy or girl, you can go ahead and follow along with me for those next steps. So we'll put our squirrel aside over here. Now for my boy or girl, you're going to need just a bit more different colored paper. So I'll move these aside right now since I don't need this. And what I am going to do is I am first going to be drawing a circle for my boy or girl's head. I want you to use that pencil, but I'm going to be using a Sharpie. Now you may need to resize that circle in a bit, but make sure it's on a fold. So this earlier was my squirrel's belly, so I'm just going to cut off that bit of extra paper, and I already have this nice fold right here. So I'm going to take my pencil, I'm using Sharpie so you can see, and I'm just going to draw a C-shaped curve. Now that circle might be pretty big, so we can always adjust it as we are cutting out more pieces of paper. All right, so unfortunately my circle looks more like an eye, so I may have to try again, and that is totally okay. There is nothing wrong with trying those steps again. So let's try and make it a little bit bigger this time. So I can always go back and adjust it. But if your circle looks perfect, then you don't have to do it again. I'm going to put this paper aside and my eyeball shape circle. There we go. Now that looks like a better circle. If you do need to fix up any of those edges, you can go ahead and do so. Now this circle might be pretty big later on. No worries, we can always adjust it later, but for now I'm just going to put it right here. My person does need some hair though. You can do that hair any way you want. However, always make sure that you do fold your paper before you start cutting. So I want my girl to have kind of short hair, maybe a little bit like mine. And you can do any kind of hairstyle you want. Maybe you want to draw ponytails or pigtails, that's up to you. But I just want to make sure that my hair is a little bit larger outside of my circle. So I'm going to go out like this and back down. As you can see, I made sure to draw along the fold. So when I cut, it still has that fold in the middle. All right, and there is my person's hair. Now I do want to add some nice little bangs for my person's hair. I'm cutting it close on hair right here. So just want to make sure to get that fold. Line up with that circle. And then I'm just going to start by drawing a curve down and around. So there it looks like an eyeball shape. But I want to make sure that it is connected. I don't want to have it so this fold is not here. But you can choose any kind of hairstyle you want for your boy or girl. If you're doing a boy, you can do this method easily. You wouldn't have to do the back of the hair. Now let's just make sure those sides are even. And I can have that bit of hair on the left or right. I can even leave it like this for the boy if I want to. That is totally up to you. Just make sure that there is a fold in the middle. All right, and I'm just going to make some quick adjustments to these bangs. And you can get creative with that hair. You could even make it yourself on that card. There is my hair. So then, when I am done, I will glue those in place. Remember, you need to make sure that that fold is with the other fold and you glue. So I'm just going to take my circle I am going to glue the back, making sure that it's pretty sturdy. But before you do that, which I almost forgot to mention, we still need to draw that mouth, excuse me, that we had done like we did with the squirrel. So let's actually cut out that mouth. Sorry that we have that glue right there. So if you haven't glued yet, way to go. But I just did a straight line with scissors and did that curve. So then when you open it up, there's your mouth. Then you can glue. However, it is important that you don't glue that head on quite fully. Or excuse me, you do want to glue it on completely. And then you can glue your bangs in place. Now I find that the person's just a little bit easier, even though you do have to cut out a few more pieces of paper. The head's not going to stick out like the squirrel's is because we're going to be doing that with our scarf. So we'll just glue that in place. You can take your glue stick and just make sure it's closed and run it along the top. Now we do have that little piece sticking out. Luckily I've got some red paper. If your face isn't fully glued on, like mine isn't, you can easily just glue that red piece of paper on the bottom. And then you can glue again. So there is my girl's head. And make sure that it folds nicely. Now sometimes that glue unfortunately doesn't want to stick on. You can always use double-sided tape as well. Now that we have our head, we'll come back and add those details just a little bit later. We want to now draw that sweater that our boy or girl is wearing. Now, just like earlier with the squirrel's body, we want to fold in half. Make sure it's really folded. And then you're going to take your pencil and you are going to draw a sideways V. Then you're going to draw a slanted line up, down, and a straight line, because that head is going to go right there. And if you need to make it a little bit bigger, you can always go ahead and do so. So I'm actually just going to make this just a bit bigger. And cut. You can always make those adjustments if you need to. So when I open it up and I put my girl's head there, it'll be like that. Now I also have to make sure that if she's got long hair, that that hair goes behind. So as I glue, I will make sure that it looks like this. However, I do want my girl to be wearing a scarf. So I'll take any colored paper, once again, fold it in half, and along that fold, you are going to draw a straight line and then curve down. So it will go underneath like this. Now, like I said earlier, you may need to make some adjustments, whether it's too big or too small. So right now you can see that it is definitely just a bit too big. So no worries, you can always go back and make those adjustments again. So there is my girl and her scarf. Now, if you need to, kind of just lift things up. If it's not too drastically glued on, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure you are lining up those folds. And then you can start to glue. So that way it looks like this. And then you can start to glue. So I'm just going to glue that part of the scarf down. Want just a little bit more showing, so I'll put it down a bit lower. Just make sure those folds are lined up. Now, once you have that glued on, we do need to make more of the scarf. However, in this case, you don't have to cut on the fold, but if you want to make sure they're even, you can. We just need to make sure we have two pieces for the scarf. So that way it can stick out like this. And that can be our pop-out feature for our card. So you can take that and fold it up and glue. And if you need to make it bigger or smaller, you can always go ahead and make those adjustments. So there's one side. And the other. Now, if you don't want it to be sticking up, that's totally okay. You can glue it straight down onto your boy or girl. I'm just going to leave that like this though. We do need to make sure that our boy or girl has some hands. So if you do have any leftover paper that's the same color as their face, you can always grab that paper. I think I can go back and use this scrap piece of paper that was the head before. And I'm just going to draw some hands. Try my best not to waste any paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I cut along, I drew it along the fold just to make sure it is nice and even. But I will then cut on that fold. All right, getting as close as I can. So I have those two hands that are actually stuck together. So I need to cut along that fold. And then I will glue it in place. I'll save those hands for when I glue it onto the actual card though, so make sure you don't lose those hands. Put them aside somewhere carefully and safe. Because now we're just gonna go and decorate our person's face. If you wanna add some extra details onto that scarf or their sweater, I'm just gonna make my girl looks super happy that she is jumping in a pile of leaves. I'll give her just some eyelashes. And I can take a brown for her eyebrows. But you can decorate your person's face any way you would like. You can also add those details to the scarf. So like I said earlier, while the squirrel is super fun to have popping out of the card, you can definitely add those little extra details to make it look more like you if you draw the boy or the girl. And I think also, very carefully, if you need your mom or dad's help, make sure to ask them. I'm just going to do some small little cuts. So that way it looks just a little bit more fun. You could even have them folded over, sticking out a little bit. That's up to you. So, all right, I'm just gonna add some little extra details, some cheek marks, and then I will set that aside because we will go back and glue our people or our squirrel onto the paper soon. But we do need to go back to our watercolor paper, and we're also going to be doing just a little bit more cutting. For this part, you may need to pause the video just because you do need to cut out a lot of leaves. Now, I have all of these really pretty leaves right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut out as many leaves as you want and glue it on your paper. So the easiest way to cut a leaf out is just to draw a simple eyeball shape and cut. But you can choose any type of leaves that you would like. Leaves come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And then when you have that leaf, you can take either a gold or a bronze or a brown Sharpie and add those lines. So here's my bronze. Or you can use gold. I myself like to use the gold. I think it shows up just a little bit better. But you can also use both just to create some variety in your picture. So, if you need to cut out those leaves and take a moment to do that, you can pause the video and then resume when you have all of those leaves. But I'm going to continue on with my picture by adding those leaves. You want to make sure that they're pretty scattered around, but before you glue, make sure that your area is nice and tidy and that you don't have any scrap papers lying around. Because now we're just going to take that time to add those leaves. Now, I want it to look like my squirrel or my boy or girl is jumping in that pile of leaves. So I really want quite a bit. And it's okay if those leaves stick out of the sides because you can always cut those later. So we'll just add more of those leaves. I really want to try my best to cover the grass though. So even though we did paint it, you might not even see it, and that's totally okay. But we'll just take that moment to add those leaves by gluing. Again, it's okay if those leaves are sticking out of the paper. And we're just going to keep gluing. You can add them wherever you want. You can add as many as you want or as few. Again, it's okay if those leaves are sticking out of the sides because we can always trim them up later. And I'll just stick one under here. fact, you don't even have to cut the sides if you don't want to. That's totally optional. Let's take a green one here. And we'll put that there. And this is where you can start to eyeball just to see where your purse needs to go. Maybe you have not enough leaves and want to cut some more. I'll add a big one right there. So if I'm going to take my squirrel, that's pretty good on this side, but I do need to add a little bit more and cover that section right there. So I'll grab some more leaves and add some more. And some more. And a little bit more here too. And down here. So this way it should be good. Now let me just add one more leaf. We'll do this nice yellow one here. Now, this is where it can get a little bit confusing, but you guys are all great artists, so I am not too worried. Let's fold our card in half, so like a book. Now, you have the choice of gluing your person down with the hands so it'll look like this. But if you want that squirrel and you want that face to stand out a little bit more, this is what you will do. First, you will glue on the whole body. So I'm going to take that moment just to glue on that body, but not the head quite yet, because again, we're going to be doing something special with that head. So I'm just going to flip this over. I am going to put that glue on the back of my squirrel. And if you don't want to glue those arms down, that's totally fine. So if you want it similar to the girl's scarf, just make sure as you are gluing your squirrel down, that fold is along the fold of the card. So if you need to fold your card down, just to make sure that that squirrel's body is lined up with the fold, you can go ahead and do so, because you want it to look like this. And sometimes you may need to just go and adjust. Sometimes that glue doesn't even want to stick on, and so that's when you can get double-sided tape, and that seems to work just a little bit better. Just make sure it is glued in place. Now, this is where sometimes that glue just does not want to work, no matter how hard you try. So this is where I take my double-sided tape. Now, the squirrel's head needs to fold. However, we actually want it to fold down like this. So what you're going to do is just line up to see where that squirrel's head is going to go, because the head is going to start to fold underneath here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just fold the corners of that mouth down. So folding down that corner and that corner. And it doesn't have to be exactly even, because once we glue the head and actually fold it, it will start to create its own fold. But we want that fold here on the head to be completely in place. So this is where I find that the double-sided tape, works just a little bit better than glue. So I'm going to take my double-sided tape. If you need to trim it down just a little bit, you can do so. You are more than welcome to try this with glue as well. I find that the double-sided tape works just a bit better though. And just make it as small as you want so you don't see it popping through the mouth. Then you will put that mouth down in place. Now you may notice our head's not completely on. And that is what we want, because when the card starts to fold, the head will want to fold downwards. So let's just take that moment to see how that fold will go, because you want it to fold in like this. So I'm just going to eyeball it, fold my card to see how that goes. So when it comes up, it'll go up like this. So this is also where that double-sided tape starts to come in really handy, because I don't want that head to be popping up like this. So I'm just going to take some double-sided tape and put it on the ears. Now if your glue's a little bit stronger than my school glue, that might work. But I'm just going to be using that double-sided tape just to attach those ears. So when you when you close your card and you open it up, there is your squirrel. Now again, sometimes that glue just doesn't want to stick, so you can always use that double-sided tape to keep either the tail down or those arms down. I actually like those arms sticking out just a little bit. That's totally up to you though. But take that moment if your glue just doesn't want to hold your squirrel down or your boy or girl. Definitely use that double-sided tape because it really helps a lot. Now you can also go back over and add those extra details to your squirrel. Maybe you want to add some fur. Maybe you want to add maybe an acorn in his hand. That is up to you. Also, if you want, you can take some scissors and trim the sides of your card so those leaves don't stick out. I kind of like the leaves sticking out though. I think it looks really fun, but I would trim the bottom right here just so I don't have those annoying little stems sticking out. So when you fold it, that head will go in like this, and then you can open it back up. It kind of looks like it's talking. With the girl or boy, you would just glue it in place along that fold and just make sure to attach the hands. The mouth doesn't open like the squirrel's does, but the scarf is sticking out. So again, you have two options for your card. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had a lot of fun creating this fun autumn card, and we will see you next time. Bye!